When I think of Moby, I think of back in my earlier days, back when I was younger, getting into rock and heavy metal and those types of things. And buying Moby for me was just something that, you could be doing just to attract the opposite sex. Now, that never ended up working out for me. But funnily enough, I did end up becoming vegan as a result for a little while, which is another story. But today we are looking at Moby's brand new album, which is sort of a brand new album, but it is a reimagination of a number of different tracks from his late 90s, early 2000s era. So someone who actually loves his meat, good morning to you, welcome to the show. What did you think of all of this?
Initial thoughts on this album, mate. I actually really quite enjoyed it. I didn't know what to expect at first. I kind of thought, they're just going to be kind of live recordings and see what happens, but the way that the different people were kind of selected to celebrate these songs and singing on them, I thought worked really well. But there was a few tracks that I thought I really wished that would have been added onto this, and I do question whether or not Moby might do another version of this down the track to include some other songs, mates. And I think it comes down to the question of, is it worth it, and if so, why? And I'd be very interested to hear your initial take and that kind of answering that question.
I mean, firstly, I'm kind of glad that they didn't go to the Porcelain and We're All Made of Stars. I think that they were probably the obvious ones. They did go into their deeper cuts. Listening to the album, it just sort of shows you how good he was in that era. Like, there wasn't a bad track on the album. That's because there weren't really bad tracks off those albums, 18 Play and others as well. But I did enjoy it. I mean, it was certainly a different take on things. So my favourites were In My Heart, South Side, and Last Night. Right, quite enjoyable, but I guess at the same time they were also enjoyable back in the day. Now, I guess it comes to the question is it necessary? And I think that's a fantastic question. I mean, for me, I'm not actually sure if this is adding to anything from those particular albums. I mean, it just, for me, it feels like these guest artists come into these records and they put stuff over the top of it, just adding mayonnaise. And for me, I think some of those earlier albums are better just because of really what was at stake for Moby, in particular for the Play album. I mean, he was going to be falling off the radar. It was going to be his last album. So you could imagine that, and coming up with an album would play a lot of pressure. And I think that's why, if you listen to some of the tracks on this album, compare it to what was on the original album, you tend to gravitate to the original rather than what has come up there. What do you think? Did you think it was sort of the same, or you think it's actually adding to things?
Yeah, I think it's kind of adding to it, because, I mean, you've got to add 20 years to when kind of Play was first released. And, songs and music do evolve and times change. And, Moby's kind of been I guess a bit of an undercurrent to that over the time. So I think it is worth kind of reimagining and using different artists that can maybe bring songs to life that maybe have been seen in a different light before. Particular highlights for me is the first two opening tracks, In My Heart, which of course features Gregory Porter, and he just absolutely nails it. It's fantastic, and that kicks into Extreme Ways, which has of Douggy from the Temper Trap there, which works really well. I think that's really good. And then one of my other favourites is Slipping Away towards the end of the album there, which is just kind of Moby on a guitar. But I would have loved to have heard Body Rock, and I would have actually loved to have heard Porcelain, Lift Me Up, and a few others as well. But I don't know. I think it is worth it. Not every artist does it, but for someone who I hadn't heard of for a while, I don't think, no harm, no foul. I mean, really, it's a Spotify play. Listen to it if you don't. If you don't want to listen to it, don't listen to it. But is it worth it? I'm a bit like yourself, mate.
Look, if anything, if it's a sort of for a commercial venture, look, I guess that's fair enough. If it's to remind people of how good he was, I guess that's fair enough too. And if anything, it has actually made me go back to Play and 18 and listen to them again. I haven't listened to it for a few years.
I'd be interested whether new listeners might kind of get involved. Is it for new listeners? I don't know. If it comes up on someone's Spotify release radar, are they going to go, geez, this is pretty good, might go and listen to the back catalogue maybe? I don't know. It's been a while. It's been a while.
All right, well, look, that's all done and dusted. We're going to go to the final segment. What did you think out of 5 stars, mate? Can you give it 5, or do you have to adjust things back?
No, I'm going to give it 4, mate. Look, he's gone through the ringer, old Moby. Like, he once actually produced a track for Eminem, and he actually asked to be to get a producer credit on this particular album, and apparently Eminem told him to go and eat. So I'm going to go give him 4 stars for this, mate. I think it's worth listening to, just for nostalgia.
Yeah, look, I'm the same. I'm giving it 4 stars. I think I've said what I said. I think that's the reason why I'm adjusting things back. I mean, for me, they're coming from 5-star albums, so if anything, the slight is, well, does it add anything? It's not really for me. I think they're all good. If it was an original album, look, I'd probably still arrive at 4 stars, because it probably doesn't have that sort of urgency that was in existence with the original ones. But still very much worth checking out. And for those who haven't checked out Moby, this is probably a good entrance into his catalogue. So that is our review of Resound NYC by Moby. That wraps up another episode of Indie Miners. Please look to subscribe to the channel, follow us on Twitter, and let us know if there's an album you would like us to look at. So until next time, bye for now, and thank you for watching.